Good afternoon, everyone. Or may I say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on wherever you are joining us today for this second seminar of the FAS Young Scholars Online Seminar Series 23-24. Now, FAS, as most of you, I assume, must already be aware of, is an independent research organization based in India. Our major objective is to undertake interdisciplinary, theoretical, and empirical inquiry in the field of agrarian studies in India and also in other less developed countries. In practice, we operate through a network of scholars from various institutes in India and abroad and people on the ground. We collaborate with young scholars and students, senior scholars, leading academic institutions, donor agencies, and governmental and intergovernmental organizations that are interested in different socioeconomic aspects of rural life, particularly in India. Through our village studies program that was initiated in 2005, we have developed a unique database of household level data from 27 villages in India that spans across different agroclimatic regions across 12 states in the country. This large archive of primary data on rural India provides a detailed picture of the Indian countryside and the lives and livelihoods of rural households at the turn of the 21st century. This is also a database that provides a unique resource for evidence-based policymaking on a range of issues, including poverty, structural inequality, economics of agricultural production, rural education, housing conditions, to name a few. Drawing on this unique data archive and many follow-up studies, we at FAS have attempted to take up key questions of the rural economy, including the situation of Dalit households, constraints of small farmers in India, and issues of pertaining to women workers in rural India. More recently, we have also done a significant amount of work to study the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic on village India. In fact, some of us may be wondering why we did not have the seminar in the month of June. It was because we were busy resurveying 2 villages in the state of Uttar Pradesh in North India as part of this village studies program. These are villages that we had already surveyed 17 years ago, and we are hopeful that the data from these resurveys will help us understand the change in the countryside over this one and a half decades. FAS regularly publishes its research in multiple forms, including books, reports, and policy briefs. Data gathered in each state as part of the Village Studies program is published under the Socioeconomic Survey series, and our thematic research work is published as Agrarian Studies series. We also publish an internationally recognized peer-reviewed open access journal called the Review of Agrarian Studies. Now, one of the main demographic group who we work closely with is the youth, or young scholars to be precise. Since our inception, we have been supporting the research of young MPhil and PhD scholars. We also run a rolling internship program for students interested in studying rural society. We regularly organize workshops to explore the research interests of young scholars working in the field of agrarian studies and on socioeconomic life in rural India. In 2022, as Utkarsh mentioned, we began a monthly Young Scholars online seminar series. This was held between April to December 2022, featuring 9 young scholars who presented their work on the last Thursday of every month. The series was chaired by Barbara Harris-White, Emeritus Professor of Development Studies, University of Oxford, and it attracted audiences from different parts of the globe. And we hope it was a small step towards building a network of young scholars working on the subject. We were deeply enthused by the reception of the seminar series. And the feedback made us rethink that maybe we should continue with a second edition and expand its scope to not just limiting it to India, but to include scholars who are studying the rural regions of South Asia. This was an idea that we worked with Professor Barbara on. She was the guiding light throughout, and today's speaker, Ms. Shilpi Kundu, a young scholar from Bangladesh, reflects these efforts that have taken place in the last few months. Now, I'll not introduce the speaker and her work. That's the task cut out for the chair. I'll just say that in a broad sense, her work falls in an expanding category of research that specifically looks at women as agricultural producers and workers, their role in agricultural production, and the specific impact on them of a larger phenomena or change, such as the climate change. And the foundation has also been at the forefront of some such studies, a lot of which has been consolidated in this book that some of you might be aware of, the book titled Women and Work in Rural India, which is an outcome of 2 to 3 year-long project, which was supported once again by Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung. So those of you interested in this, in various aspects of this question, may want to have a look at the book. And now I think I've taken enough time. So let me straight away hand over the floor to Professor Barbara. Professor Barbara.
Thank you very much, Sandeepan. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All the way from France.
Yes, all the way from a very remote village in central France, where the Wi-Fi is not too reliable. I'm very happy to chair the second series of this expanded young scholar seminars, and I want to welcome everybody who's online from Europe and from South Asia. Expanded Europe and expanded South Asia. And I also want to welcome Utkarsh, who is replacing Sujan, whom we wish nothing but well. The formula for this seminar is more or less as follows. The speaker will speak for 25 to 30 minutes, will then be discussed for 5 to 10 minutes, after which the floor is open for Q&A. Please write your questions in the chat, and I will attempt to moderate the questions into bundles of related questions. Our speaker is Shilpi Kundu. She's an assistant professor at Sher-e-Bangla Agricultural University in Bangladesh, and she's studying for a doctorate at Griffith University in Australia. She's expert on agricultural extension, forest management, but has turned her attention to climate change and agriculture, and to, as Sandeepan said, this very, very interesting topic about the role of gender in climate change responses, which is what she's talking to today. And her lecture will be discussed by Dr. Sreeja Jaiswal, who is a postdoctoral fellow at Heidelberg University in Germany, who works on conservation regions and also on food security, so on very closely related topics. Welcome to both of you, and over to Shilpi now for your paper, which we're looking forward to eagerly. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Barbara and Sandeepan, for the introduction of myself and the agrarian studies. And thank you all of the participants to join in this program. I am taking that opportunity to present before you about my study, that is recent study, that is gender mainstreaming in climate. Is it visible?
Yes, it's visible.
Yes, it's visible.
Gender mainstreaming in climate change responses inside from agricultural landscape in Postdoc Bangladesh. So this is my outline of the study. I'll start with the brief introduction, how climate change is impacting our agricultural sector and how women are affected because of climate change. And I will discuss why gender dimensions are important, what are the national and international commitments about that. Then I will discuss research objectives, followed by research efforts and results and discussion. So we know that during the recent years, there has been a growing discussion among the policymakers, practitioners on the role of anthropogenic climate change, which is altering the climatic system of the planet in an unprecedented way. And agriculture in South Asia or all over the world is vulnerable due to climate change. And the perceived impact of the climate change are drought, higher temperatures, saltwater contamination, flooding, cyclones, and tidal surge. And that is impacting the economic status of that of South Asian country, including Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Maldives, Nepal, Sri Lanka. We can see an average loss of around 2% of their GDP by 2050, and it can sharply rise up to 9%, and which can damage, which is very problematic for the natural resource dependent livelihood system. So what is the situation in Bangladesh? As we know that Bangladesh is one of the most vulnerable countries, its position is 6th vulnerable country. And because of its geographical location and agroecologically vulnerable coastal zones and high dependency of natural resource dependency livelihood, and that results in food and livelihood insecurity, which can risk to realization of sustainable development goals. And major concern, as I told, because of huge population pressure in Bangladesh and high demand of food, so our cultivable land is decreasing, and productivity of the land and residence system is reducing. And it is because of we have high demand of food, and for that we are losing our local variety. And there are other reasons. Reasons are, they say, disintegration of the value chain, unemployment, and labor migration. And for that, intervention is very much essential, which can reduce vulnerability, enhance resilience, and sustain productivity. And we can see that some of the interventions are contributing to the adaptation, while others are promoting maladaptation. So in the coastal ecosystem, as I'm talking about coastal ecosystem, and coastal ecosystem is very much influenced by salinity intrusion. And main dominant causal factors in agriculture sector, most of the causal factors are climatic factors and non-climatic factors. Human intervention is creating another issue in that area. This and climatic challenges are sea level rise, temperature, flooding, tidal surge, and human activities. Large-scale aquaculture industry is developing in that area, and that is creating creating problem or adding more saline in the soil or in the agricultural land. So I'm talking about the gender. Why gender dimensions are important? Because of climate change affect community differently, irrespective of gender, age, and inequalities in agricultural sectors. And you know, half of the population, like 50-50 population, around 50-50 populations are male and female. So they may be differently vulnerable. An institution which can reinforce, which is like adaptation responses may reinforce existing inequality. And that adaptation in reinforcement or institutional support can help the adopter change their behavior. And when people change their behavior, there is a chance for equal access of resource, and which can improve the agriculture sector and other development outcomes. So these are the all sectors, these are the all possible areas that why gender dimensions are important. And to see the importance, we can say that the global gender commitments are also there. Different agreement, I mean, conference of parties, their emphasis on gender dimension, gender issues, and also there is a sustainable other agenda like sustainable development goal. Goal 5 is talking about gender equality, and in line with the international commitment, nationally also gender are included in the policy process. like, National Adaptation Program of Action, Bangladesh Climate Strategy and Action Plan, and National Women Development Policy in 2011, and Bangladesh Climate Change Strategy and Action Plan. This is a big and very comprehensive policy documents in our country, and which is incorporated with the 8th 5 years plan in 2021 along with the UNFCCC Gender Action Plan. And my research is basically focusing on in the coastal ecosystem. Coastal ecosystem is very much impacted because of climate change and gender. So my study is focusing on our applied a case study method for socioeconomic and gender analysis of adoption of climate smart agricultural practices, and the second one is challenges behind the adoption process in southwest coastal Bangladesh. And to focus that area, I have established a framework and that build on 4 key dimensions. First one is access to adaptation technology and validated practices, access and availability of financial resource, policy and institutional support, and impact on macroeconomic changes. So for that, I selected the coastal regions in southwest coastal Bangladesh. That is situated in Khulna division, and it is like Shamnagar. So that Upazila is Shamnagar. Upazila means sub-district, which is situated in Shamnagar, and it is close to proximity of sea level rise. Close to the proximity of Bay of Bengal, and there is in one part it is situated Sundarbans. So this is the most vulnerable region, one of the vulnerable region in Bangladesh. And for that study, I select a case study method, explorative and descriptive case study method. And I have taken qualitative approach because I wanted to take in-depth data rather than mapping quantitative relationship among variables. So which is like participatory method, it is questionnaire survey, focus group discussion, followed by expert interview. And sampling, purposely I selected that group and analysis. I did that in a thematic analysis using in vivo 12. So this is the socioeconomic condition. If you see the picture, so in right side we can see this is the living place of most of the people in that area. And left side you can see the water condition. It is like people are. This is the birthplace. I mean, they take birth in that area. That in the pond they cover some of the portion, and that day this is the as this area is very salinity issue is very so development agent and government there are some desalinization plants, so people can collect water. I mean, drinking water from that area. So this picture represents that their socioeconomic conditions are very poor, and they are suffering with the water crisis, both drinking, household use, and irrigation everywhere. So I wanted to know that what are the women's perception of climate change. In the picture it said that biophysical and ecological challenges they are figured out, and most of the important point is salinity. Almost everyone was talking about salinity, whereas we can see that sea level rise, very few people. Actually, maybe it is policy is not reaching there, or people are not, or people who are living to the near the river bank or near the sea, they can understand that impact of sea level rise. Otherwise, sea level rise is in that area is visible, but very few people talk about the sea level rise. And ecological things about water quality. Okay, because of salinity, or I showed the previous picture that water quality, how bad the quality of water. It is one of the case that salinity is the most important case. And otherwise, as agriculture, they are dealing with the agriculture, so they are suffering with the disease, pest infestation, seasonal change, and iron and arsenic attack also in that area. So what about their awareness? To some extent, they are aware about the adaptation regarding climate smart agricultural practices and their benefits, because this is because their own experience and local extension support from government office and from the NGOs and other development agencies are actively working in that area after the cyclone Cedar in 2007. And these are I developed some framework. I said that on four key dimension, that is access to adaptation technology and validated practice. Adaptation technology, this technology and validated practices I found from the field study, and I match it with the policy documents, basically national agricultural policy and national agricultural extension policy. And I said that there one comprehensive policy, Bangladesh climate change strategy and action plan. From this analysis, I got that validated practices and adaptation technology, what is going on in the field. And in the field interview also revealed that people are practicing, or women also practicing, that they are getting some training on pest control measures or biofertilizer preparation or organic fertilizer, how to make that thing available for their field. And from they are getting training from the government extension services and NGOs. But NGO has one concern: who take loan or who join the self-help group, they can take that opportunities. And farmers are adopting other techniques, for instance, crop diversification, cropping system optimization, and high value cropping. And most one farmer, according to farmers, they are saying that before Cedar, they don't understand, they were not caring much, but after Cedar, they understand that how the impact of salinity and other things. You will not find any of the old tree that is before 2007. All trees gone just for a huge amount of salinity, huge amount of damage happened. So major gaps I observed that basically women are mainly engaged in homestead gardening and small scale crop production system with adopting some validated practice with the help of self-help group. But although crop production is increasing because they are continuously working, they are taking some of the training, they are attending, they are working for that. But although crop production has increased, it added value, and problem is they can sell that market. Another thing is I am talking about that biofertilizer, they are taking training, but there is deficit of the raw material in the market, and sometimes when they produce more, they don't have any opportunities to sell that in the market because market system is not developed for the organic farming or for the biofertilizers. So biofertilizer or organic fertilizer, there is no marketing system is developed in that area. And women adopted some of the practices, but they have less institutional access. That is another concern, because they need to do soil test or other information they need to avail from the organization. But I am saying that they are getting help. When organizations is coming or institution like support service are coming from to them, they can take that, but they don't have that ability to access that information from institution by going there and taking their support. It is not, it is lacking there. Second thing is access and availability. Access and availability of financial resources. Interview, in that case, major observation is interview revealed that women have less access to loan because they do not have the asset like loan or money. They do not have, and they are less educated. Most of the cases I found that they are less educated and they don't have much information about the banking loan. On the other hand, they join self-help group for getting the loan. But to some extent, they can get the loan, female can get the loan, but problem is they can take that decision for, after getting the loan. Their decision making is male-headed people are taking that decision. So this is the who are not giving the transfer their money. I mean that women are getting loan from the NGOs or from the self-help group, but that male-headed people are taking that money. If they don't want to give them that money, they have to tolerate a lot of harassment. That is another observation. And third is socio-economic resilience. Actually, as they are adopting, they are continuously working in the field for production. It is like homestead gardening. In that area, homestead gardening is very much profitable, or I say that all people are trying to include that homestead area as garden. So they in that way they are like to some extent they are improving their socio-economic condition. On the other hand, they are diversifying their income by poultry rearing, handicraft, tailoring, or collect non-wood product from the nearest Sundarban. As this area is close to Sundarban, so they have that opportunities to collect that and participated in the labor market also. And but there is some problem also here. I found that climate change increases women's socio-economic vulnerability by directly impacting their families' food security, water consumption, and traditional livelihood. So, and another thing is they want to diversify their income, but like small scale poultry rearing or the livestock rearing. So in that case, they need support, institutional support. They don't have most of the cases, they don't have mass asset to do that. And supply chain development also require support and services from the government and NGOs. That is, they have less access. On the other hand, both male and female are participated in the labor market. However, women are getting low prices compared to the men, and it is like in SDG 5. It is included in the SDG 5 that they don't have. They need to get the market access of the market, because or they need to get the proper salary from that that day labor. And there is another issue, as climate change or impacting that area very, very badly. So seasonal migration is one of the most important cropping strategies in this area. And that time, women need to handle their household activities and all other activities. So if they don't have any decision-making power, then if NGO, if they are engaged with the NGO, they can't take that decision all on a sudden. That is another problem for that women. So my third point is policy and institutional support. As I mentioned, that national commitment in the national gender issues also included, like Bangladesh Climate Change Strategy and Action Plan. But and they incorporate that plan into 8th 5 years plan also. And how they are helping to the farmers, to some extent, they try to include farmers in the farming activities, like in the service. But and for that, there is some project. In that project, they wanted to involve 30 to 50% female, and to ensure, because this is Muslim-dominated country, and some Muslim men, they don't prefer their wives to go out and work. So for that strategy was to ensure the 100% women are involved, and they choose the husband work. I mean couple together, so they will feel confidence to work and to take that opportunities to take the support service from the government organization. But here, major problem is culture. As I said, culture is a big issue, and women do not have that decision-making power because of traditional gender role. Another thing, when many of the women are nowadays in that area, they are working in the field. But problem is they can't take decision. So this is the drawback in that area for that women. And farmers noted a lack of support for risk-pooling. For example, there is no insurance policy for cultivating crops in the risky environment for both male and female. In that area, actually, there is some pilot project was running for that insurance, but because of huge climatic issues, it didn't run well, so it is stopped, and they need that insurance policy. But private organization also saying that if they go for that, literature shows that private company, if they go for that service, they may not get the proper price, because or they need to include huge price because of the risky environment. And another thing is development of institution, I mean self-help group. That is working very well. Women develop their self-help group with the local NGOs, so it can avail their they can be able to build their skill and contribution to the macroeconomy. And they receive training on agricultural practice, handicraft, tailoring, and other skills. That usually women take loans from the NGO, and then male use that loan or take that decision. On the other hand, NGO workers also, they were saying, okay, we are working here with the women, but or with the self-help, we are creating that, we are helping women for the to get the service or making the self-help group. But problem is we have some limitation. If government organization is working with us, then we can expand our services, or we can scale up, or we can scale deep for that services. And impact of macroeconomic changes. So farmers are trying to increase cropping pattern and increase cropping intensity by adopting technology and practices. In that area, actually, cropping intensity was 125%. So now they are hugely adapted. They are changing it. The cropping pattern has changed. Like now, they thought that vegetable is a profitable business. If they can produce early, they can sell it very profitable way. So most of the farm family, they changes their cropping pattern as vegetable, or Rabi, Kharif, Kharif 1, Kharif 2. In 3 seasons, they are producing vegetable. Otherwise, they can keep one almond, tea almond, and in other 2 seasons, they can cultivate vegetable. And that's why they are increasing cropping intensity. And because of soil and water salinity, they adopted prawn culture and crab culture as an alternative means of livelihood. But pain issues gaps observed here that most of the crab and culture increase salinity drastically in that area, which is hugely impact agricultural production and productivity, as well as human health. Because and another issue is now most of the farmers acknowledge that they are facing temperature issues, and for that temperature and for that lease means you will rent the land and you will cultivate, or you will make the do the prawn culture. So in that case, they can't make the land deeper. So in that case, and the huge amount of chemical use, so it is getting very toxic for the human health, for the environment, and for the agricultural land also. And out migration, it is another very big concern, increasing vulnerability to the women who have taken responsibility, all the responsibilities of their family. And market access, and it is very true that they don't have any structural market access. So what are the problems? They sometimes sell the product to the middleman at the home without getting the actual market price, and their laborious works go unpaid. And there is another, they may not be able to take decision buying agricultural food or selling them, which is when migration is happening or seasonal migration is happening, they suffer, and sometimes they avoid that cultivation also. So these are the all the issues summary as a whole. If I can say that climate change impact or affect the gender disproportionately, and Bangladesh women are as a socially disadvantaged group who are confronting severe negative effect through their daily life experience, collecting water or doing household activities and like homestead gardening and other activities. And there's I found that there remains a notable absence in the understanding of the role of women in creating and sustaining, because they are working, but their work is not like documented or is not like paid for that. They are like what role they are playing in the context of climate change, it is not clear. And another thing is in the agriculture center, gender equity is an inherent difficulties, because women rarely hold ownership of the farms, and for that they don't have the decision-making capacity. And culture is as a big issue. Like culture means I'll say religion issue is very big issue in that area. And gender equality needs to be addressed to support women in agricultural sectors. So for that, institutional reformation is very much required, and social institution reformation to imbibe skills and knowledge in climate resilience agriculture also required, and providing financial risks, as there is no insurance policy or other risk management mitigation or risk management strategies. So financial risk mitigation and risk distribution arrangement should be there. And fostering gender approaches in climate resilience for macroeconomic changes triggered by climate change, it is very much essential. And then innovativeness in gender neutral and or gender adjusted infrastructure, as they don't have any access to markets, so it is very essential. And of course training and capacity building in value chain development is also required. Thank you very much for your patient sharing. Thank you all.
Thank you, Shilpi. That was extremely rich, and I think has already provoked a lot of interesting questions in the chat. May I ask colleagues to write more questions in the chat, and we'll take them after Dr. Jaiswal, whom I can't see right now. Are you there? Sreeja? Yes.
Hello, yes.
From Hyderabad. We'll give her discussants comments. Over to you, Sreeja.
All right, thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Shilpi, for the presentation. So in discussing the presentation, I would actually like to zoom out a bit and focus my comments firstly on the framing of risk from climate change impacts as it is done in the IPCC's 6th assessment report. Then I'll go on to question whether the concept and practices of climate smart agriculture are adequate for meeting developing country needs and priorities, especially when it comes to improving food security and enhancing farmer incomes, as well as meeting gender considerations, gender equality considerations. And then I'll end my comments with zooming in on some of the general observations on the presentation. So yeah, moving on. So IPCC's 6th assessment report highlights that global warming reaching 1.5 degrees Celsius in the near term is going to give rise to multiple climate hazards and present multiple risks to ecosystems and humans. But in the near term, the level of risk is going to depend on the concurrent trends in vulnerability, exposure, and level of socioeconomic development and adaptation, as some of it was presented in Shilpi's presentation as well. So in the near term, I believe that undertaking a IPCC risk framing approach could better highlight the socioeconomic and adaptation challenges facing developing countries like Bangladesh. So in the IPCC framing, basically climate in the context of climate change impacts, the risks result from a dynamic interaction between climate-related hazards with exposure and vulnerability of the affected systems to this hazard. So the climate-related hazard in this context means increasing temperatures, sea level rise, and so on, increasing intensity of cyclones or frequency of cyclones. Whereas exposure refers to the presence of people, livelihoods, and socioeconomic assets in places and settings which could be adversely affected by these climate-related hazards. And vulnerability is, of course, the propensity of people to adapt or cope with this resulting hazards. So to quickly give an example, so we can say that increasing flood frequency increases the risk to human systems, right? But whether and how much will the actual risk result from climate change by a given date, that would actually depend on the concurrent socioeconomic changes, including what we do for management of that risk, how we look at land relations, how we look at infrastructure building around in and around coastal areas, and so on. So if we use this kind of a framing, it seems pretty evident that regions which have considerable development constraints, which include poverty, lack of access to basic services, and high level of dependence on climate-sensitive livelihoods, they would be more vulnerable to climate-related hazards. And if we use this kind of a framing and then go on to consider what kind of adaptation options we need in agriculture, it would be evident that we need to increase yields, we need to improve farmer incomes and reduce gender inequality, and these should take center stage. Which brings me to the question of whether the civil society or international NGO-driven climate-smart agricultural practices are up to this task. And in Shilpi's presentation, actually, the set of climate-smart practices which looked, so there was a confusion about the set of climate change smart practices, which whether it could lead to better adaptation, if adaptation. So because the recommended climate change smart practices often tend to be highly location specific, going back a little bit on what climate smart agricultural practices actually mean. So they are supposed to deliver triple wins. They are supposed to deliver triple wins in terms of improved productivity, improved resilience to climate change shocks, and also very importantly, they're also oriented towards climate change mitigation. So reduced synthetic inputs and improved carbon sequestration. However, as Shilpi's presentation also brought out, that some of these practices can be very labor intensive. They can actually reduce yields and may not provide immediate benefits to the farmers. Also, there are significant obstacles regarding its adoption by smallholder and marginal farmers in developing countries who already, and in Bangladesh, who already suffer from low yields, low input use, and have low levels of mechanizations, and are also food insecure. So given that food security and development challenges in Bangladesh, it is clear that improving agricultural productivity through technological change, through market access and access to credit and socio-economic development is quite important. So my specific now going on to my specific comments on the presentation. I think there would be a need to closely investigate whether this civil society or NGO-driven climate-smart agricultural practices can deliver on these development and adaptation goals in context of Bangladesh and several strategies which Bangladesh and action plans which Bangladesh has put in place for climate change adaptation. And also a risk framing of the problem of climate change impacts should focus not just on the hazards, that is rising sea level rise or temperature, but also look at the dynamic interaction between exposure and vulnerability. Yeah, and one of the very general and very broad overarching comment I have is that in media outlets these days, nowadays, more and more we see that migration in Bangladesh or increasing salinity in Bangladesh is being projected as something which is climate induced. This sort of ignores the long history of livelihood-related migration in Bangladesh to deal with reduced productivity or rural precarity and debt. And the other is land use changes which lead to increasing salinization, like aquaculture. So where land is intentionally flooded with salt waters, seawater, in order to undertake shrimp cultivation. And these are some of the socioeconomic dynamics of land use changes in Bangladesh, which are not necessarily climate induced or climate related. So yeah, so my overall comment is that we need to sort of integrate these aspects together when we think about climate change adaptation in Bangladesh.
Thank you very much, Sreeja. That was very timely and extremely interesting because it related Shilpi's presentation to some wider issues which our audience may well appreciate. Now, Shilpi, would you like to respond to Sreeja's comments?
Thank you, Sreeja, and thank you, Barbara. Actually, I mentioned there is if I say that salinity issue, and I mentioned this is because of climate change and because of human intervention, because they are like bringing salt water from nearby the agricultural land. So that agricultural side by the agricultural land is affected to the salinity, and soil salinity or water salinity is there, and there is one thing is land zoning is there in our country. Land zoning is there, land zoning policy or land use policy. In that land use policy, there is land zoning is also there, which land is suitable for what, so they can use that land in that way. But problem is some of the businessmen, they are bringing salt water to the field near to the agricultural field for their more profit. And now farmers are or women are suffering because of that. Salt water is getting more salty, and because of the temperature issues. And and another problem, okay, shrimp or prawn culture or aquaculture, nowadays they are adding crab farming. So crab farming also salt water is required, but and that is but problem is they can't maintain the proper rules and regulations for the land zoning, and that is the main issue. And seasonal migration, okay, I said that area is very close to near to Sundarban and proximity to the Bay of Bengal. So both ways that is that area is very much I would say vulnerable for the cyclone or tidal surge. All of the things are coming. So in that case, farmers sometimes who have less land, I said in our country, very small piece of land people are holding. So who have less land and they are struggling with the things, and what they are doing, they are going for labor migration, seasonal migration, working in bricks factory or working in coming to the next city for rickshaw pulling or CNG pulling. So for this service they are taking, and that time women need to be at home and they need to take all of the responsibility because their children are there, their other like older city members are there, so they need to take all of the responsibility. And you were saying about a climatic risks exposure. Definitely exposure is there, and exposure can be mitigated through adaptation, if there is proper adaptation. And that area people are doing, they are intensively working. When I interviewed men and women, both group I interviewed, they are saying that after CEDO taught them a lot of like how to manage livelihood. So in that way, they are managing. But because of human intervention, because of climatic change, things are getting changed. And what are the available practices? Okay, that is definitely context specific. And as that area is very much vulnerable, very much like saline prone area, so they are doing like, to some extent, they are harvesting rainwater. And they are using as alternative wetting and drying. Okay, that is like very established one, that alternative wetting and drying. And some people, when they get water, they are not interested to go for alternative wetting and drying because of more weed infestation. Alternative wetting and drying, more weed is there in the field. So that way, labor also, another extra things is labor requirement is getting higher. So some context is actually male farmers are doing in one way, they are like managing things bit better way, I will say, compared to women. And women are working with their husband or with their male member of their family. But my main point figure out I hear that they don't have a money handling issue, or they are less paid, or their work is not they are not getting proper money for their work, or they are not paid. They need to take sometimes a lot of responsibilities. That was the like field observation, or from the interview I found. Thank you. Hello.
You're audible. Professor Barbara.
Thank you for answering those questions. We have a lot of questions in the chat, very interesting ones. I'll start off with two on policy. One.
Professor Barbara, I think you'll have to turn off your video because the internet connection, I think, is going down. So I think turning off the video might improve the quality a bit, quality of audio at least.
I think she left, she will join again. Yeah, we've lost her. She'll come back, I think. Yeah. Maybe Shilpi, you can just read the questions in the chat box while we are waiting. Okay. Quite a few questions have come in the chat. So shall I?
Why did you moderate, Madhura?
Yeah, let me just get started on this. So I think there were a set of questions. I don't know what Barbara was going to focus on, but a set of questions which I'm also interested in is about this links to Sreeja's point about NGOs and SHGs, this whole NGO-led adaptation, and at what kind of credit do they give, at what rate of interest, what is the cost, and is it feasible, and is it likely to result in the triple wins?
Thank you. Actually, NGO, how they are working, they have different plan for the ultra poor, and then who are less poor. So they have different plan, and they are considering based on the economic status of that member. So they are considering, they are giving that loan. Like one ultra poor member can get 2,000 taka, whereas whose economic condition is better, they can get 50,000. sort of like that. They have different plan for the to give the service. And another thing, NGO actually, I will say they have microcredit business, and in that, but some of them are running project which they are supporting to the rural development, and for that who have that project, they are giving some training like capacity building to that women group or men, so they are considering that way. And I talked with one of the NGO officers, and he was saying that okay, we are trying to cover as much as possible, but it is not possible, and because to cover many of the farmers, scaling issues they are talking. And definitely how they are working, they are doing good, but their scale is very less. And another thing is like
Can I just add that, because there's a specific question that do NGOs provide training to women to empower them against patriarchy, to discover their strength in working as a collective, or do they confine themselves to technical training on livelihood activities and lending and repayment? So that is a question in the...
so this is basically they are providing training for technical training. It is not like you will separate your family member. It is like you will grow up. They are not doing, but they are trying to give some like vermicompost. Many of the women don't know how to make that vermicompost or how to use that. They are giving that technique to the women, or as they are hugely involved in the your mic is muted.
Yeah, I'm just intervening because I don't think we have many minutes, but there are a lot of questions. So perhaps if you can comment on something about land rights and titles for women, is that part of the Bangladesh policy on climate adaptation? Is there anything on that which you can tell us? And
land right, how I can say, okay, women are getting some part of their land, like they are supposed to get some part of their father's land. Some part of father's land will go to daughter. But what is cultural issue that most of the cases siblings thought, okay, brothers thought, why she will take that land? She can give it, we can use that. Most of the cases, these sort of issues are happening.
And so can I understand that it's really to do with inheritance laws? There is no land titling program of the government of Bangladesh in particular. Is that right? Is that? Barbara is back.
There is, like I said, some certain portion of that land will go to daughters after their departure. So, or when they are alive, they can give some part of their land to their daughter. But problem is like
Barbara, sorry, can I just come in? Barbara, I asked a few questions from the chat box while you were away. Okay,
thank you very much. That's what I hoped.
Over to you again.
Okay, it is like mentioned. It is
We'll
rule.
wait for some more questions from Barbara. Huh? Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
I think when I was interrupted by technology, I was about to ask 2 questions from the chat, which has now disappeared because I've had to rejoin, about policy. One was from Dr. Mohammed Arfan, and it was about donor discourse being very detached from the problems of implementation. And he followed that up with several questions about the project that you evaluated and livelihoods and evidence for women's resilience and for ecological agriculture. And Dr. Ranjan asked whether there were implications of your research for Bangladesh's climate change and
Professor Barbara, if you can turn off the video, I think it will just increase the audio quality a bit because
Barbara, turn off your video. Barbara had suggested you switch off the video. It may help.
It is not audible.
Professor Barbara, please try and switch off your video. I don't think she's able to get us.
Shilpi, can you answer the question she asked, which is also there in the chat box, right at the top of the chat box from Dr. Muhammad Arfan?
Most of the question first loaded from
Hello?
Thank you for your question, Muhammad Arfin. But I'll say it is not terminology, it is practice. I said I took this validated practices and adaptation technology and this terminology, and I validated with the field observation, and I from the interview, as well as I matched it with the policy documents. So these terminology are not appear donor, or it is implementable measure, but I'll not say it is not non-implementable measures, but some of the things, as I mentioned, that alternative weightings and drying, as for example, alternative weighting and drying, and where alternative weighting and drying, farmers, there is no other way to use flooding irrigation because they have less water. So how they will do? Okay, for other area, alternative weighting and drying, farmers don't prefer because they are thinking because it has some other intervention also required, that is weeding. So a lot of weed germination happen in the alternative weighting and drying. So in other area, it may not be possible where water is available, but in coastal region, that is very much usable. Okay, in some cases, one of the question was like, is it marketable? Like salt tolerant crop variety. It is marketable. Maybe updated one is not marketable, is not available in the local market. Like one of the farmers was saying that every
Can I just come in here? Sorry, just come in. I think several of the questions are talking about policy, even whether it's marketing, availability of varieties, rate of interest, credit, access to new technologies. So what is the role? I think many of these questions perhaps linked to what Barbara said is, what is the role of government? So if we can move away from NGOs, whom you have described in quite detail, and tell us about government policy and how in your study area do you find, what is the kind of support coming on all these different issues from government measures?
Okay, thank you. So like I said, several policy documented that Bangladesh Climate Change Strategy Action Plan, that is well mentioned how food security should be assessed, what program can be there. And we have like extension services from the national level to root level. There is 5 tier they are working, and the root level, they are actively working as like sub-assistant agricultural officer is working, like block supervisor is working with farmers. So they are giving service, but my case is like how much service they are providing, it is not sufficient. That is, it is not enough for the farmer, because farm family, a lot of farm family are there, but they're like, suppose in one area, there are 5,000 or 500 farmers there. So their services support are coming for like 20 farmers. So in that way, there is some farmers are telling that government is not doing anything, but they have planned. They do demonstration. They do. They are calling for training, or they are trying to build capacity. When the things are, and government is taking initiatives to develop salt-tolerant variety, and salt-tolerant varieties. Variety scientists are developing salt-tolerant variety. Government has huge investment for salt-tolerant variety development. But problem is how salinity is increasing. That way, like one variety can tolerate 10 ds per meter. So, and but salinity of that area is increasing highly. So it is like massing of the strategy, and that is tolerance level of the salinity. There is some mismatch, but still government has policy, and we have national agricultural policy and national agricultural extension policy that is working well. But things are like, to many extent, women are not. They are trying to make women involved in the system, in the service system. And one of the government officers, he was saying that we are trying to make involved of the female in this system, in the service system. And that's that they are trying to 30 to 50% women. And for that, they are trying to make couple farmer. I mentioned that couple farmer together. So female will feel comfort to work or to access that service. But it is not everywhere. It is not available everywhere. That is the point. And in the current study area, I presented in that area, women are participated, but they have other access issues. They don't have that much. There are a lot of gaps. The government need to work more, or if they can promote NGO, or NGO saying when we get fund, then we can work. And their work limit is who will be member, they will get services. So there are some issues always in the field. In the implementation case, there is a lot of issues are available in the field.
Thank you. I think we've lost Barbara again. Am I right, Sandeepan?
No, I'm
Yes.
here.
Oh, you're there.
Uh,
Oh, sorry. Please go ahead.
Just
But Madhura, I don't know what questions you've asked in the chat. And as I've logged back on, I've only got the final question. So
Yes,
if you
please.
could summarize the questions that have been asked.
Oh,
I
I have
could-
to read all of the discussion then.
there were-
No,
there
I
were-
think there's
With what has
Um,
government policy been?
no.
What has government policy been? In any case, what about your comments, Barbara? We're keen to
I
hear.
think, yeah, we were over to you, Barbara, for your comments, because we've asked quite a few of the questions backing and forthing. So I think we can.
Yeah, I could see that there were questions, specific questions on technology, what salt is doing to productivity and so on and so forth, and questions about the processes already underway in that area before climate change and the big cyclone devastated the region, and questions about institutions. So there's one in the chat now also about institutions. And your policy recommendations at the end rather assume that institutions can function as intended. So one of my own reactions concerned how you conceive of policy, and whether when we're invoking institutions as solutions to problems which they have failed to solve previously, such as NGOs for financial and literacy and training for women that Dr. Jaiswal Singh is talking about in his chat comment, whether we also need to expand our conception of policy to include institutions which are hostile to the implementation of a given policy in the way we would like to see it implemented. And so obstacles, and also what institutions need to be in place for a policy or an operating organization like an NGO or self-help organization to work as intended? These are rather open-ended questions, but they are begged by the analysis that you have given. And the other question that I would like to pick up is on framing, which Sreeja started her discussant's comments with reference to. And this is not just framing of risk and framing of climate change, but framing of men-women's relations. Because if we're going to ask this really important question about the impact of climate change on gender relations, we're asking about men and women. And what we need to know, and it's not clear that your research actually could do that, is how men and women relate to one another in productive activities, in market activities, in socially reproductive activities inside the household, and in relation to finance. So commodity markets, financial markets are one set of gender relations, productive activity are another set of gender relations, and then reproductive activity are a third set of gender relations. And how does climate change alter the settlement between men and women in different agrarian classes? Agrarian classes, I don't know whether that came up in chat, but that didn't come up in your presentation. And men and women relate to each other differently in different agrarian classes. So I had this big overarching wonder about how you're framing gender, or whether you're simply looking at women and their involvement in climate smart agriculture. I have more questions, but I think we're running out of time, so I will leave it there. But I also want to thank all the people that I couldn't invoke because of this technical hitch on the French side of it.
Thank you, Barbara, for your nice point, or I'll say question. And first is you are saying about institution. Actually, I was talking, Madhura was asking about institution, how institution is working, and in the government policy, they are talking about partnership work. But most of the cases, there are some, may have some obligations that they can't or they may not able to include NGO in every sector. That is one thing. But partnership work is government organization also thinking about partnership work. To some extent, like quality seed production, like private organization is doing quality seed production, and they are supplying seed all over the country. And so that way they are working. And NGO, if I say how NGO is working, in our country, that residence fund, 10% of residence funds is going for the to the NGO to do rural development activities, and with that, and that is going by project wise. And I'm saying in my talking, I'm saying that when they get fund, when they are getting fund, that time they can work. They can work for like give them training or other facilities they can give. But otherwise, it is not. It may not be possible for them. Or but how they are running? They are running with their microfinance activities. I'll say it is kind of sort of their business area. So, and but one most important thing is like self-help group. Self-help group is working well, but still, as it is, I said that because of cultural and religious issues, many things will take time, may take time, and because to access market or to access office, it is going on. I must say it is not, and it is context wise. If I say in my another study area, okay, it is not included in this presentation, but I have another study in another coastal region. So in that area, women cannot go out. to work, because men are saying she is my responsibility. If I take her out for work, what I will say to my Allah. So this is to my God, what I will say to my God. So there is a religious problem is there. Otherwise, as a institution is working, self-help group is working. But what is problem? That is market issue, or that is gradually developing. Another thing you were talking about how men and women are working. Actually, they are working as a in household activities. In household activities, definitely women are doing. But for the gardening, they both are working. They both are working. It is like a current scenario in that study area that men and women are working together, and they are trying to develop their socio-economic status. I showed one picture. They are still living in mud house, but now they are trying to make it like T-shed house, or they are trying to send their children to the school and colleges to another city. So men and women are working together. But when the things of decision-making power, leadership activities, and that in that area, it is yet to reach for the women. It is not there. So
But as Dr. Singh says, women are bound up in social relations that are controlled by men. And he is suggesting that over time, the processes that you have described are going to be making women less competitive, lead to more exploitation, and push them to marginalization. And you've described several paradoxes, how when men migrate to respond to climate change, that means women are unable to take decisions about production. How when prawn and crab is produced to respond to salinization due to climate change, it exacerbates the very problem that it's designed to solve. And how commodified production, I think it's vegetables, by women are actually captured by men who take them to market and sell them. And so Dr. Singh's chat comment is actually a very important question.
okay, thank you. Basically, this is happening because who are getting migration, or who are working for labor migration or seasonal migration, those who have very less amount of land. That is one main point. Who have big land, they are not going for labor as a labor for so in that case, women are facing some difficulties. All on a sudden, if you're like one person is ruling all these things, all this decision power, but all on a sudden, if he went for the job, for if he goes for the job in another city, and then that time it is difficult all on a sudden. But it is mostly happen who are very small marginal farmer, or but for large farmer, this is not the scenario.
Okay.
And okay, this is sort of, if I say two things together, that woman needs wanted to take their own decision, and another case, if I say that when out migration is happening or seasonal migration is happening, and seasonal migration time, actually those women are handling their household activities, all things. Like I said, they need to take care of their children, they need to take care of older people, of their like parents or grandparents, so they need to take care of the things, and still their livelihood, whatever land is available, like homestead gardening. This is the some sort of scenario, and most of the cases in most of the houses, they have little bit of like poultry rearing case, or they have livestock. So like 2 cows or 10, 15 chicken, duck. So they are like managing their activities. It is not, if you think about big scale issue, it is not the scenario, but it is for the marginal farmer, or I will say sometimes it can be landless farmer scenario, who have large amount of land, they are struggling with the situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shilpi. Thank you also, Sreeja, and the people who put their questions into the chat. This issue of climate change or ecological crisis and its impact on gender relations is something that really needs a great deal more research. Thank you, Shilpi, for introducing it to the agrarian seminar. I'll now hand back to Sandipan for closing remarks and information about the next seminar. Over to you, Sandipan.
Sorry, I'll take it.
Oh, it's
Thank you,
Tapas, sorry.
Professor. Yeah. On behalf of this foundation, I shall take a couple of minutes to propose a vote of thanks. First, I'd like to thank Shilpi Kundu for a informative presentation. I hope this discussion was enriching for her, and it was also for us who are present here. I also thank today's discussant, Dr. Sreeja Jaiswal, for her participation and valuable comments. We are very grateful to Professor Barbara Harris-White for chairing this session and also her support in expanding the scope of the seminar series. As you know now, it expanded to the South Asia's scholars. We are also very thankful to Professor Madhura Shaminathan for taking up the Q&A session in today's seminar. I thank to Roja Lecture for students South Asia for their generous support in making this series possible. I am also thankful to the online team at FAS here, Sandeep and Sujan Utkars, for their role in conducting this seminar very smoothly. But last, not at the least, we are very grateful to all attendees here for participating and making this a lively discussion. As you know, all the seminar series is one of the objectives we made this platform to build a network for the young scholar. And I think from this today's seminar, I must say that there are many people have joined today's seminar from different parts of the South Asian countries. And we also see that there are some the people have started sharing their work in the chat box. Thank you all. And as I mentioned earlier, that a recording of this session will be made available on the YouTube in coming weeks. And to know more about the foundation work, and please visit our website at fas.org.in. And we are also active in social media. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. I request you all follow us on this platform to not just to get update about this seminar series, but also about our other different work, what we do. We'll be ending this session with this once again. The next session is I think we'll update in our website and also through the mail. Once again, thank you all very much for your participation in the discussion. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.